Welcome to the Real Estate Women's Podcast. Thanks for pulling up a chair to our roundtable discussion. Here, we'll teach you how you can create a stream of passive income through multifamily investing, and we'll help you to shift your mindset so you can start living the life you really want to be living by design today. Hello, guys. Welcome to the Passive Investing Podcast. My name is Crystal.
I'm Colleen.
And I'm Tamara. And we're the Real Estate Women. Today, we're going to be discussing financial education. Financial education is the ability to understand and use various financial skills such as budgeting, investing, and managing your income and debt. Having a strong foundation of financial literacy can help support your various life goals such as saving for your retirement, using debt responsibly, and budgeting for goals such as a new home, education, and or passively investing in multifamily properties.
So we feel that financial education can be broken down into 5 basic concepts: budgeting, building your credit, borrowing, savings, and investing. Today we're going to chat about each of these 5 concepts. Now, when I personally think of budgeting, the first thing that comes to mind to me is my income and my expenses. But we wanted to start the budgeting conversation off with the importance of going a little deeper than just your income and expenses and talk about how easy it can be to take a little snapshot of your current financial situation by creating your own personal cash flow statement known as a personal financial statement. Crystal, how did you get started with making yours?
Well, for me, I had to have a need for it, right? Because I didn't even kind of realized it was the thing. I didn't know I had to have it until I thought about purchasing my first investment in a first 3-family. So I then realized, wow, I guess I need this. This is something I probably should have already had. I should have known what all these questions that I was being asked at the bank, they expected me to know. So I'm like, okay, now I have to do this. Let's do it. And it kind of started with my income and my expenses. And then I learned that is kind of what creates your debt to income ratio. And knowing your debt to income ratio in more detail, that can definitely help you, obviously, when applying for that loan, because that's it tells you, let's say you make, for round numbers, we're going to say $5,000 a month. You have to take out what aspect of that your income goes from your each different types of debt. So if you have a $5,000 income, you have a percentage of that goes to your living expenses, your car expenses, your play expenses, your grocery expenses. All of that aspect kind of creates your debt to income ratio in the different buckets that are in that. And that can sound super complicated, but really what it boils down to is write down your income, and your expenses. For me at the time, I had a job, I had a cell phone bill, and I had a car bill. It was pretty basic. And that investment property for me was going to be a house hack. So I was intending that asset to join me in my asset column or a new income for me. What about for you guys? When did you guys first start writing that personal financial statement? When did you have it before you needed it?
For me, no, I definitely didn't look into it until we were applying for our first personal mortgage. And, they needed to know what we made and what we spent money on to make sure that we still had money left over to afford to live in that home. So that was the first time I made one. And, hindsight, I maybe wish I had one sooner and kind of known a little bit more about it. Definitely to know where you're going in the future, you need to know where you are financially now, so that you can make those changes and meet the goals and do the things you want to do in life. How about you, Tamara?
Well, for me, I was not in the real estate lending business. I got into the real estate lending business after I bought my first property and my first home that I lived in. So it was quite the learning experience. Because no, I didn't have it together at that time, and then quickly learned the importance of having all those components together and accessible.
I feel like sometimes just having the knowledge is half the battle, because
Right.
we were all in the same boat. We didn't know we needed it until somebody asked us for it. I'm like, okay, wow, we probably should have known this. And obviously that was the beginning of our journey of investing and all of that stuff. But in hindsight and thinking like, how am I going to teach like my girls, my children, my daughters?
Right.
I definitely want them to know that stuff ahead of time. Like having a cash flow statement or your personal financial statement can be so important because it is essentially that snapshot of where you are right now. And knowing that helps you to plan and adjust. So definitely keeping that is important. And I think it's one of those things that it's always evolving. Your personal financial statement is it's not gonna be the same for long. You know what I mean? You could get a new job, you get a raise, get a different car, make investments. So it's definitely super important to keep that nice little PDF. If you start small when you have nothing but a job, a car payment, and a phone payment, and you just add to it slowly, it makes it really easy to just look at that picture all the time, like take that snapshot a little bit here and there. And I think it's helpful, definitely. But that's any other things you guys think are super important about, the budgeting and all that type of stuff?
Well, writing things down and knowing where you're at and knowing what you're spending and then coupled with what your goals are is really important to take a look at. Like you said, to have that PDF, a snapshot at all times, and to educate yourself and be knowledgeable. And that's why we're talking about this today, right? Because we don't want we want our listeners to be as prepared as they can be, and as knowledgeable as they can be, within, wanting them to achieve their financial goals.
It's true, because it's the first step, to financial education is to help you learn healthy spending habits. And that's the best way to learn it is by your budget. Definitely. So I totally agree. Nobody wants to get to, yeah, that point in life where you're just kind of broke on a higher level, right? Because
Right.
it's really easy to get that, you get that raise at work and then you think, oh, well, I can go ahead and buy a nicer, newer, better car because now I have a raise. And really, maybe if you would have planned appropriately, you would know that buying that car is taking away from that raise. Now you're just broke on a higher level. You never get to appreciate and really see that raise come into the asset column or the income column of your personal financial statement because you immediately took it out to the expense column by buying a bigger car. So bigger, better, newer car, which it's hard not to do, right?
Yeah. Well, and then after knowing your budget, it's important to build your credit. I know Tamara, you've dealt with that a lot in the past. So tell us a little bit about how important it is to build some credit.
So yes, credit is so important. It's so important to know the components of it and to start. And it sounds my advice. There's a lot of people that have helped through the years, that they didn't have a credit card, and then they were like, "What do you mean? You're telling me to get into debt?" And it's like, I'm telling you to have a record of, how you make payments. I mean, a banker and underwriter is not going to be able to know you just from what's in your bank account. They need to know, how do you make your payments? Do you make them on time? If you have a credit card and, do you max it out to the limit every month and, things like that. So it's very important to get that started. And there's different components that go into that. And it's important to have a combination of installment debt, which is like a car payment, that's a fixed payment, and that variable debt, such as a credit card. Like to see a minimum of three credit lines at a minimum, and the longer you have that history going, the better. So it's really good to get started as young and as soon as possible.
Yep. Yeah, definitely get that credit card. And it's,
Mm-hmm.
if you have $1,000 limit, it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend $1,000 on it all the time. Put
Right.
$100 on it, pay it off this month,
Right.
just little stuff, do your groceries, and then just make sure you pay it off every month, because it's important
Yep.
to build that credit score up, right? Because that's what banks use to know that you're worthy of
Hmm.
them loaning you money. That credit score kind of goes hand in hand with borrowing. If you don't have a credit score, it's very hard to borrow money
Yeah.
from anybody. And if they will let you borrow money, it's going to be at a very high interest rate.
Hmm.
If you don't have a credit score or you have a poor credit score. So it's definitely important to keep some focus on that and know what your credit score is and where you're at and how you can improve it.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
definitely it's important too to know what's on your credit report. And there's various different resources out there for you to be able to check and see. So there's not surprises. Like you don't know. I mean, someone not could maybe, I mean, I don't know, identity theft does happen, but it's just to be aware and not to be surprised and have something that you're working towards be change and just because you didn't weren't checking it. So it's really important to keep your eye on that for sure, and just keep building because you can bounce back. That's the other thing, just if maybe our listeners or someone you can definitely build your credit score back up, and start wherever you are. So
Yeah. I really love the way you said something, Tamara, talking about a credit card and how a credit card is not getting into debt. It's
right.
starting your history. It's starting a report.
Hmm.
I've never really heard it put that way, and I absolutely loved it because I've heard so many people say like, "Oh, I'm not going to use a credit card. I don't want to get into debt," because that's
Hmm.
exactly what people think. But that's because their mindset with a credit card is to just spend, spend, spend with no intentions to
Hmm.
pay till whenever. But if the intention was purchase, like use a credit card in the same way you would a debit card that comes directly out of your bank.
Hmm.
Use it for what you're gonna spend and pay off at the entire balance at the end of the month. But I really like the way you put that, Tamara, and I totally agree that knowing your credit score is so important because for me it was like super exciting to start off. Like I was a fan of the various different sites. There's Credit Karma, Credit Sesame, all these free options. I loved them because it started like, okay, I have like a credit score, but it's not 850. It's not like the golden credit that everybody wants, but it was just because I was young. I had a credit card, never did anything wrong with it, but it was just a credit card in a car
Hmm.
and these little things. But to watch it grow and then to learn more and to start getting excited about watching it grow, that is what encouraged me to like look into it. Like, okay, how can I build my credit quickly? And then
Hmm.
by doing that, you can learn little tips and tricks. Like if you never utilize more than 30%
Hmm.
of your credit, of your total credit, that will actually give you a dramatic boost in your credit. So even if you only have two credit cards and they're $1,000 each, make sure you never spend more than 30% on each credit card before you pay it off. Now that doesn't mean you have to spend $300 and then stop using it for the end of till the end of the month. Pay it right away and then use it again and keep doing that on all of your cards because an important thing is that all of the credit bureaus, well, they pull your credit at different times. So as long as you're always under that 30%, no matter what time they pull it at, they're always, in their eyes, you're always going to be in the golden zone, that like sweet spot.
Yeah.
Um, so those little tips and tricks can really, really help because I definitely know people and have helped people in the past. And I'm no expert, but I'm an avid Google searcher and love learning about things. So I had helped someone with really, really bad credit and bad debt. We went on the Credit Sesame, Credit Karmas of the world, learned what the debt was. Yeah, debt he didn't even know he had. So
Right.
he paid off these various things, and because he had no idea that there was a Comcast bill in his name that was never paid. So all these little things, like Tamara said, you don't want the surprises.
No.
Yep.
So just knowing that is so important. Knowledge is truly, truly power, especially when it comes to your credit. Know how to use it, know what you have to fix if you have something, and have that goal. You guys totally hit the nail on the head with that. And then that leads us, to the next aspect because we have credit. With the next thing with credit, really, that comes borrowing, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to have credit to borrow. And like you mentioned, the Tamara, the credit card companies, I'm sorry, all the loans in the banks, they look at that credit. That's the history
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And without that ability to borrow, it's going to be tough, right? What was the experience that you had, Tamara, when it comes to no credit and borrowing? Because I know you have a lot of experience in that field, right?
I do at one point. Yeah, I was a mortgage loan officer and did residential lending, a little bit of commercial lending. But so the main thing about that is just from different levels of just you need to start to take and like dissect your income and basically your debt and your payments. So taking that, and then that's where the debt ratio, or really comes to play, and can be maybe overwhelming even using those terms. I'm even hesitating to even talk about that, but just keeping things like we've been talking about, just where you need to have a payment history is just very important to have a payment history to be able to qualify for those loans.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
and with your credit score, you qualify for better interest rates, right? Like a first time
Right.
home buyer with
Yep.
so credit might have an 8 or 9% mortgage, whereas somebody with a really good credit score, a couple years ago had 3.75, 4%. It's a big difference in your payment monthly. Like, you don't think about it, but it could be the difference between $1,000 monthly payment and a $1,500 monthly payment. And having that better credit score and that lower
Sure.
rate would keep, in that example, $500 in your pocket to put in your savings, to invest, to do whatever your heart desires with it, right? But having that better credit, like, generally lowers your costs for things.
That's
Yeah.
a very good point, Colleen. Yes, I. It's been a just a couple years since I did that directly for a living. So yeah, that component is definitely. And then to save $500 in your pocket, and or to be able to qualify for another loan or a
Yeah.
different loan,
Yeah.
or to buy an investment property. It leaves you wiggle room, and or to qualify for a more expensive property.
And that all, the interest rate that you get depends on what type of loan you can qualify
Hundred
for. That
percent.
all comes into aspect of kind of important knowledge you have to have of borrowing. Like, you really need to know the impact of borrowing on your credit and what impact
Mhm.
that's going to have on your income. Because there's good debt and then there's bad debt, and it's really, really important, especially when we're talking financial education. The whole key is to be educated, and it's really important to know the difference between a good debt and a bad debt. Because credit can sound scary, but like we mentioned, credit card is
Yeah.
good. It's a history. It's the record. It's not bad.
Mhm.
It can be used negatively, and it can
Sure.
get you in trouble if you're paying that 25%.
Mhm.
But it's the same thing for borrowing. Knowing what you can personally afford is important. You should know that, okay, I can only afford XYZ before the bank even tells you that, if you have that personal financial statement. And the whole good debt versus bad debt, I think it's an important thing kind of to touch on, because a lot of people can get confused by certain things. And there's some debate about your personal home. That's usually for most people, that's the biggest personal
Mhm.
expense or purchase you will ever make in your life, is your home.
Mhm.
So is that considered an asset, or is that considered a liability? Is that good debt? Is there bad debt? There's a lot of discussion between that. And I think we here in the real estate, when we believe that it can really be either. It all depends how you use it, right, ladies? Because um, like for me, I know the home that I purchased, that I live in, um, this I did not purchase this with an intention of making it an asset. To be honest, like, I know that this is probably my biggest liability, and it's took my husband and I many home purchases, and we've lived in every apartment here and there before we made the decision to purchase our first liability. But I know it's not going to be an asset. Whereas I know, Colleen, you have different experiences where you've purchased homes that
Mhm.
you turned into an asset, right?
Yeah, I know. The last home we purchased was in 2011, which, you have to say part of it was timing, right? It was
Right.
a buyer's market.
Mhm.
So we were able to go in and get the home for considerably less than it was asking for at that time.
Mhm.
We put some money into it. We've redone kitchens and baths and whatnot. But, over the next couple of years, well, one, we refinanced it down to like a 3.75 mortgage, which was great. And then two, we were able to take out a home equity line of credit on it for over 100K and use some of that money.
Mhm.
So when you're starting off with a business, we couldn't really take out loans in our business because just like you have a personal credit score, there are actually equivalents for businesses.
Mhm.
So you go to a bank and they're like, gee, you're buying your first house under this business name. We don't really trust that you're going to pay it back. We need to see that you've made payments for a couple of years, that you've done something. So we were able to use the equity in our home to initially purchase a home. And after 12 months of having that as a rental home, we were able to refinance it into our business, get it out of our name, put our money back into our own home. And so we just kind of had this invisible bank account over there that we could draw money out of. Another good part of it is in the meantime, when we were doing this, we were able to, because of a high credit score, back to the credit score thing,
Mhm.
we were able to just make interest only payments on that money we pulled out from our HELOC. So then when we refinanced it, it was more cash flow in our own pockets. So we have been able to use our home, but it is all about the right circumstance, the right purchasing time, and the forethought of it. So I guess it just, there's a lot of variables that go into it. But for us, it was an asset that we could use to purchase things, that we otherwise couldn't have attained at the time.
Which is so awesome. Like that is the definition of being financially educated if you really think about it, because
Mhm.
she was able to take something that's a liability. Because if you actually look into an asset versus liability, an asset is something that puts money into your income column, where a liability takes money out of it, is in your expense column. So to be able to have the knowledge and information to take your home, which starts as a liability because it does not make you money, it's just you pay that mortgage, it costs you money. But if you educate yourself financially, do your research, do the right thing, you can change that liability into an asset by using different strategies, which obviously is too deep for this particular
Yeah.
episode. But that's the importance of knowing an asset versus liability, knowing how to change one to the other, and being flexible. You got to realize that there's sometimes it's not a right answer. Your home isn't always an asset, and it's not always a liability. It just depends on the knowledge that you have in how you take care of your own personal finances. You're the CEO of your life, your personal finances. So if you don't take control of that, nobody will. So
Mhm.
it's a great example, Colleen, of what
Yeah.
you can do with the right financial education for sure.
Yeah. Well, then, rolling into the next bucket of savings, I had read an article recently that there's some pretty shocking statistics out there, right? Like an example is that, for example, millennials nowadays, 44% of them say that they carry too much debt. They carry the largest student loan debt in the country. 37% of them are considered financially fragile, which means they can't come up with $2,000 within a month of a financial emergency. That's sad.
That's horrifying. That's like
Yeah.
truly scary.
It's scary.
Like it's
you
scary.
know
For
and
sure.
and that's where the idea of, at least with myself personally, I do some savings first. So when I look at my balance sheet, I make sure I save right off the top. I still work a W-2, so 10, 12, I can't remember the exact percent, but my income goes right into a retirement savings for me. That I don't even see that money. I don't think of it. It's not within my expenses. It's not money I can spend. I don't consider it income. It is there for someday. And then I also have, my little side savings of money that, oh man, I need new tires on my car. I need to be able to pull it, because you don't realize that until
Right.
you get to that point where you're like, oh shoot, I need something and I don't have the money. So I pay myself first in making sure I have those savings set up before I even consider my budget. I don't know, you guys do any of that or?
Well, yeah, that's an emergency fund is what
Mhm.
it's labeled on our balance sheet. Just, there's different varying opinions out there. Like you should have 6 to 12 months
Yep.
of what's your, what are your living needs? What's the total? And because emergencies and different things in life do come up, that unexpected things, you know, they just
Yeah.
do. They just happen. So to be planning for that, just the word saving to me is just it's more planning than, and then of course it's savings, but just planning that,
Yeah.
different word,
Well, and then your
for the same
emergency
thing.
funds should be liquid money, right? It
Oh
shouldn't
no,
be,
right.
well, I own this property over there. No, like
Yeah,
if you
no.
need this money in 48 hours, you should be able to get this money,
Right.
right? So I know some people think of, even just having a 401k or something. Yeah, you can't really, or college savings accounts. You can't
Right.
really pull from that. You need some liquid money somewhere that when something happens, you can use it now.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely in the, make sure you have at least like 4 to 6 months in the bank so you can live. Like if, you know, everything hit the fan and you need to have that there, like I believe that you should know what your expenses are for 4 to 6 months, whatever you're comfortable with. Maybe start with four and have your first savings, your fund there, your backup fund, may start it with 3 months and then four, and maybe have that eventual goal to be six. But I think it's super important to have that backup fund before you start your investing, because learning to save is a hugely important aspect of financial education, because there's so many ways you can do it, right? You can use traditional savings accounts like the 401ks or the retirement savings funds. Then there's the investment portfolios. So I know personally for us, we're getting ready to start our the stock 401k IRA journey for my husband and I. We don't
Mhm.
have traditional W-2s right now, so that's something we're going to be doing on our own. Right now, we have our savings funds for the next investment. We have our travel funds, and then we have our emergency funds. And I think that is a hugely important thing. And you need to make sure that before you're filling the fun bucket up, you want to make sure your savings funds overflowing a little bit and that it flows into your all the other buckets. So definitely, it's savings is hugely important, and you have to look at what your priorities are, what your comfort levels. We talked a little bit about risk here and there, and that's really important. Like, is your job safe enough in your income? Everything's liquid enough where you only feel you need 2 months in your backup fund before you can start your investing, start putting that extra money into the investing fund. And what percentage of that are you ready to invest in stocks, which is, that can be, you can do it in a long-term stock, something like the S&P, that's going to be there for you, but you're getting a decent percentage. At the end, if you have a lot of time, risk versus reward all comes into play. And I'm excited for some of our future, um, of course, episodes where we can dive deeper into that type of stuff. But I know I really benefit from clearly defining my savings goals so I know exactly how much I can spend in other places. Because for me, an importance is traveling and experiences is one bucket that we fill up quickly. I always like to make sure I have my other buckets full, so I'm ready to add to that one.
Yeah.
Um, and
Well, then, yeah, I mean, that kind of steps us right into investing. Obviously, you've got to make sure you have all these other buckets kind of filled before you have, what do I have left? And, what you have left, you can invest. And it's always important to diversify what you invest in. Like I do have a traditional 401k through my employer. But I also invest in some real estate. We've owned some single family rentals and stuff on the side. We've done some flips. But it's important to not put all your eggs in one basket, right? Because all it takes is for something to go wrong with that one stock, with that one multifamily property. Because even that, your money is not guaranteed. They lose it, it's gone, it's gone. So you do have to. I believe it's important to diversify and to know your risks before going into something. And to understand that there's always a chance that you may lose some money too. I don't know of anybody who's never lost anything. So it's just important to plan ahead and to think about it and to know that all of your other things, your expenses, your home, your car, your whatever is all taken care of before you use your extra money to invest in something.
Yeah. And it's like when it comes to investing, it's like you have to kind of really have that plan, I think, right? Because what are your goals for your investment? Why are you investing? What do you need to have? Because for like myself, not having that W-2, not having that 401k I'm contributing to every week, I really feel good when I have my plan in front of me and I know, okay, like when I'm done working, this is what I'm going to have. This is going to be my income that's there, whether or not I go to the job every day. It's really important for you to have that, regardless what your W-2 status is or isn't, knowing that there might not be Social Security at the end to take care of you. So investing it's a necessity, I think, in this world. And I jokingly, my daughter, she's 5, so she's of course getting, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And she asked me what she should be, and I'm like, you should be whatever you want. She's like, but how do I? She's like, I want to do this. I want to save animals, and I want to be a doctor. I want to do this. I'm like, well, it looks like you need to be an entrepreneur. Like jokingly said, so you make investments, and you have the time to do that. And then it like stuck with her. She's like, yeah, I can do everything. And because I'm going to be an entrepreneur, so I can do whatever I want. And she obviously doesn't really know, but that like stuck with her. And I think it's one of those funny things that it makes sense, no, and it's not, I'm not necessarily saying to be an entrepreneur. What I'm saying is if you set your life and yourself up as soon as possible to make those investments as soon as possible, you can eventually feel good about retiring early if need be or whenever you want, as long as you write those goals down. So if you want to retire early, write it down and make sure you're saving appropriately to get to your goal. So it's really, I think, about the planning, the saving, the budgeting, knowing the end goal first. And gosh, I mean, right, ladies, I think we could talk about budgeting and planning and investing and that type of stuff, setting goals for a while.
Well, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, we definitely could talk about this for a long time. One statistic, though, I think I'd like to share, though, and just the importance of writing things down, because the statistic is that only 1% actually write down their goals. And according to a study by Dr. Gail Matthews, on goal setting statistics, if you write down your goals, you are 42% more likely to achieve them. And that, I don't know about you, but like us being number people, I mean, a 41% increase or 40, or yeah, increasing your odds by that amount, by almost 50%. It's just very important to, write things down.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm definitely pro planning. Am a planner. Gosh, ladies, I think this was great chat. I think we really touched on, a lot of the 5 concepts that kind of makes up the financial education, budgeting, building credit, borrowing, saving, investing, those 5 components really help your financial education. And the more you learn about that, the more important, the more power you're going to have, really, because I think personal finance is something that is constantly evolving. And financial education should truly be a lifelong pursuit and something that you need to always stay informed on. And doing something like that is going to always keep you on a path of, financial well-being. It'll keep your life financially healthy. The more you educate yourself on the different topics that we talked about, the more financial educated you're going to be. And it's just going to make you feel more and more comfortable making the big financial decisions in your life when you know what your snapshot is. And I think, that really sums up a lot of what we chatted about. And definitely, guys, stay on the lookout. We're totally going to have more deep dive episodes about all of these about all the different aspects of financial education, because it's truly an important thing for us. So I just want to thank you guys. We want to say thank you so much to all of our listeners for joining us today at the round table. If you ever want to hear more, learn more about us, you can always check us out on our Facebook, Instagram, and of course, all of our episodes are on YouTube. And then there's obviously our website, therealestatewoman.com. You can always check out. So again, thank you guys so much for being here and listening. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals and do not give investment advice, tax advice, or other professional advice. Please consult a licensed professional before making any financial decisions.